Kevin Harvick is still undecided on his racing future past 2023, and Kyle Busch thanks Toyota and is excited to work at Richard Childress Racing starting in 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about American Legion. As it was announced this morning and reported by Nathan Brown, the American Legion has signed a multi-year partnership extension with Chip Ganassi Racing. This will include sponsoring Alex Palous' number 10 car for majority of races in 2023, very similar to what NTT Data did. Now, NTT Data, of course, left Chip Ganassi Racing into the season as they will be sponsoring Aaron McLaren SP, which is one of the reasons why they were trying to force Alex Palous over Aaron McLaren SP in 2023. Really good to see American Legion is stepping up to sponsor them in 2023. Really exciting news, and happy to see that they will be sponsoring Chip Ganassi Racing in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Snowflake 100. Now, of course, before the Snowball Derby happened, you had the Snowflake 100. Now, the race started really late. I think around midnight Central Standard Time is when the race started. Casey Roderick put up a very dominating clinic, and he would win the Snowflake 100. Casey Roderick also won the truck race, the Pro Late Model truck race that happened a couple nights prior, so he really had a great Snowball Derby. Actually ended up finishing 5th in the overall race, I think, in the Snowball Derby. So congratulations to him on winning the Snowflake 100. He did it in dominating fashion. Massive congratulations to him on winning the Snowflake 100. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Chinese Grand Prix. As the 2023 Chinese Grand Prix has unfortunately been canceled. Had been slated to run in 2023, but due to certain reasons I'm not going to get into, this race has been canceled. Formula 1 and FIA is trying to figure out what race will substitute. If I had to choose, I say go to Turkey for the Turkish Grand Prix, bring that race back in 2023. That's what I would substitute the race for. Very disappointing news. The Chinese Grand Prix has been canceled. It's been a staple on the schedule, but I don't know if we're ever going to go back to China for the Chinese Grand Prix ever again, especially with certain things going on in China. So very disappointing news, but not the most surprising news in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Marcus Armstrong. As it was announced on Friday that Marcus Armstrong will be driving for Chip Ganassi Racing in 2023 on the road and street courses. He'll drive the number 11 car in those select races. Now, Marcus Armstrong comes from the FIA world and Formula 1 world, where he raced in Formula 2 and Formula 3 from New Zealand, and now he'll get an opportunity to race in Formula 1 IndyCar in 2023. Very good decision. I think he's a very talented young driver who's going to have a really good chance to get the best out of that equipment, and I'm very excited to see what he can do in 2023. The big question is who's going to drive the oval races. I would think Ryan Hunter-Reay is the favorite if he's not going to Rahal. I think he's definitely the favorite to drive that, and not Jimmy Johnson, though there's still a possibility Jimmy Johnson could run the Indianapolis 500 in a couple of the oval races. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but good to see that Marcus Armstrong is getting an opportunity, and I think he'll have some really strong results in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Bill McAnally Racing. As been reported on multiple people, including Casey Campbell and Chris Knight, that it's reported that Bill McAnally Racing will announce their 2023 truck lineup tomorrow on December 6th at 12 Eastern Standard Time. Bill McAnally Racing, which is McAnally-Hilgemann Racing, they, of course, will be announcing their plan. We already know at this point that Colby Howard will not be returning to McAnally-Hilgemann Racing. He will not be driving the number 91 truck. So the big question is, who will be in their truck series lineup? Well, I would expect that Derek Kraus is going to return to the number 19 truck. He's been with the McAnally-Hilgemann group for the last couple seasons, so I would think he would return to the 19 truck. The big question is, who will take over the second truck? There's some drivers that are definitely available. Maybe Haley Deegan out of nowhere is going to go to Chevy out of nowhere. Who knows? This final thing, she's going to go to McAnally-Hilgemann, let's be honest. But I think that in all seriousness and all honesty, we'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. But maybe it's going to be someone, probably maybe Dean Thompson. Well, Dean Thompson has an announcement today, which we'll talk about tomorrow or on Wednesday. But who knows at this point, but McAnally-Hilgemann will announce their plans tomorrow for 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Gateway Dirt Nationals. Now, the Gateway Dirt Nationals took place this past week in St. Louis in the Edward Jones Dome, and a couple big names ended up winning. So Tyler Erb won the big Pro Late Model. He ended up winning the major event in that, and Ricky Thorne Jr. won the junior late model. So basically, they both won the big events in the Gateway Dirt Nationals. Very emotional win for Tyler. Congratulations to both of them. Kenny Wallace had a really awesome win where he actually was able to win the last chance qualifier. Charlie Mefford had a really amazing interview after getting involved in a wreck, and a lot of people became fans of him. And it was such a really, really cool event. I wished I could have been there because I definitely would have vlogged that and definitely had an opportunity to go there. But congratulations to both those guys on winning the Gateway Dirt Nationals. Unfortunately, unlike last year, there's no stakes to go to Nice Motorsports to drive in Knoxville or Bristol or whatever. But congratulations to both those guys regardless, and congratulations to both of them on winning their events. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about this 2022 Snowball Derby. Now, yesterday was the 2022 Snowball Derby, and this race was a Derek Thorne domination. Derek Thorne led, I think, 290 out of the 310 or 315 laps. He completely dominated this race. And after the last couple years of being the dominant car, he finally has picked up his first Snowball Derby victory. Mass congratulations to Derek Thorne. He's deserved it for the last few years. A very emotional win for Derek. He's had the dominant car the last years, and for him to finally win the Snowball Derby is really great to see. Now, there were a lot of NASCAR drivers who were at this event. Josh Berry actually was up front for majority of this race, but I think he got taken out by, I can't remember the guy's name who took him out a couple times, but he got wrecked a few times. Eric Jones and Ty Majeski, they had a crash during the Snowball Derby where Ty Majeski just made a mistake and basically went for a ride and ended up crashing in that race. And then, of course, William Byron, I think he finished 7th or 8th or 6th or something like that. And there were a bunch of other guys like Sammy Smith running the event and a bunch of other drivers who were involved in the event. Brad Keselowski also was racing in the Snowball Derby, but unfortunately did not make it to the main event due to being eliminated in the last chance qualifier to get into the event. That being said, though, congratulations to Derek Thorne on finally winning his first Snowball Derby. He should have won this event the last 3 years. He's had the dominant car, so I'm very happy to see that he finally has won the Snowball Derby. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sage Karam. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Sage Karam will drive for Alpha Prime Racing in 2023 on a part-time basis. His first start will take place at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now, the number and crew chief lineup for him has not been announced. I would presume he'll probably drive the number 45 car. Now, how many races do I think Sage Karam is going to run? I would presume probably around 10 to 15 races, very similar to what he ran in 2022. He's probably going to run a lot of races, probably a lot of road course races, considering there's 8 road course races this year in the Xfinity Series. I would presume that he's going to run around that many races. Now, I think this is a really good opportunity for Sage. Sage had some really strong runs in the NASCAR Xfinity Series last year, had a couple top 10s with the Alpha Prime Racing Group, and just did a really solid job getting that experience and really doing it as good as he could with the Alpha Prime Racing equipment, because the Alpha Prime Racing organization, and this is no disrespect to Tom and Joe Barnes, but they're not the fastest organization. So to see them run as well as they did is really phenomenal to see, and good to see for Sage Karam. He's getting another opportunity to help build around the equipment. I think it's really exciting to see that he will get to continue driving for Alpha Prime Racing next year. I think the goal for Sage, try to get a couple top 10s, maybe somehow get a top 5, but just finish on the up in every single race and get as much experience as possible. I know he wants to eventually go full-time in NASCAR in general, whether it's a Cup, Xfinity Series, or Truck Series, but I'm very happy to see that Sage Karam is transitioning over to NASCAR and racing with Alpha Prime Racing in 2023. If you're a fan of his, you definitely got to be really, really excited. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brennan Poole. As it was officially announced on Friday that Brennan Poole will be driving for JD Motorsports full-time in 2023, driving the number 6 entry. Brennan Poole, near the end of the season, made a ton of starts for JD Motorsports and had some very decent runs. This will be the first time that Brennan Poole has raced full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series since 2017 when he drove for Chip Ganassi Racing. I think this is a very phenomenal and incredible opportunity. He's a very underrated driver, in my opinion, who really kind of got screwed over due to the DC Solar situation and really got screwed out of an opportunity. He's been scraping by for the last few years. He made some starts for Rickwood Racing back in the day, a few years ago in 2019, and he hasn't really had this opportunity in years. So I think this is a really great opportunity for Brennan Poole to go back full-time, and I think he'll be able to help build up JD Motorsports. They obviously confirmed also that Bailey Curry will be in the 4 car, so I think the goal for JD Motorsports is try to be a consistent team, to try to be a top 20 team, and maybe somehow shock everybody and make the NASCAR Xfinity Series playoffs. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think it's great to see that we are going to see them return with Brennan Poole in 2023. really fascinating and exciting news, and I cannot wait to see what Brennan Poole is going to do with the organization next year. I think the goal is to try to finish in the top 20 in points with Bailey Curry and try to build JD Motorsports to be a much faster organization. We're still trying to figure out who's going to drive the zero car next year, but I'm very happy to see that he'll be returning to JD Motorsports next year on a full-time basis. They've got two really solid drivers driving for them next year, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with the rest of their lineup heading into 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch this past week competed at the WRL Racing League event and actually ended up, I think, winning the second day. Now, it says they came across the line in second by penalties, but Kyle Busch actually competed with Austin Dillon Motorsports. And for the most part, they were actually the dominant team. They led a majority of that race. And to see Kyle Busch already contending for victories with RCR type equipment, actually driving the number 3 car was really, really fascinating and really great to see. Obviously, Kyle Busch was driving for Rich Schultz Racing in 2023, and I think it was fun to see that Kyle Busch compete. I actually watched a little bit of that race. It was very enjoyable to watch. I will say the broadcast didn't do as good of a job I thought they were going to do, but I'm very happy to see that Kyle Busch is getting opportunities to race. We'll talk about Kyle Busch here a little bit more on him in just a little bit, but really good to see that Kyle Busch is already competing for wins with Austin Dillon Motorsports. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cypress Hill. As it was announced yesterday that Cypress Hill is going to perform at the Busch Light Clash after the last chance qualifiers are completed. Last year, or this season, they actually had Pitbull perform a little bit of a pre-race concert for the race. The main event actually happened after last chance qualifiers and heats concluded. Pitbull performed. Cypress Hill, who was a group that was really relevant in the 1990s with songs like Insane in the Brain and a couple other big songs that ended up being released, they will be performing in this. I think it's really exciting that they're bringing Cypress Hill. I think that's really, really fun. Of course, they're a relevant hip-hop group, but they haven't had a lot of hits very recently, and I do like that they're bringing them in. Do not get me wrong. But I think if you're going to want to transcend NASCAR and get a lot more people to enjoy, you need to bring big stars. I think Post Malone would have been a really great choice for this event. Granted, he costs a lot of money, and I understand it's going to be a lot of cost for him to do it. But I think it would make a lot of sense for them to bring someone like Post Malone or somehow Justin Bieber or something like that. I know that'd be really, really difficult, but I think don't get me wrong, I'm happy to see Cypress Hill's coming in. I think it's fun that they're bringing a group like Cypress Hill in. I just would like to see someone a little bit more like in today's time, you know, like a Post Malone, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I think it would have been cool to have someone like a Post Malone come in, and I think that would have been very, very fascinating. But we'll wait and see, but I'm happy Cypress Hill is coming in to do the show. I just would like to see someone a little bit more relevant in the current times, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. There's a couple more things we need to talk about from the championship banquet. And the first thing was Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs spoke to the media, and Bob Pockets reported on this a couple days ago, and he says that Ty Gibbs is happy to have Chris Gale as crew chief and thankful he got in the 2311 Cup car in substitute role to prepare him for 2023. Obviously, Ty Gibbs will be driving full-time for Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2023, driving the number 54 Cup Series entry. He also, like I said, of Chris Gale's crew chief, who was crew chief in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think getting that experience in the NASCAR Cup Series and driving for 2311 Racing while he struggled, I think it will prepare him to do a lot better. Now, I'm not expecting Ty Gibbs to be a championship threat this year. I know some people are expecting him to win the Cup Championship. And while I do think the equipment is going to be better than what he had at 2311 Racing, I think with him being rookie and as young as he is, with him only being 20 years of age, I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to get acclimated. Now, by the end of the year, I think he will be a force to be reckoned with. I think he will be competing for wins by the end of the year. But I just think that you're going to have to win a race to make the playoffs. And I don't see him winning a race in 2023. I think he'll get close to winning a couple times because I think that 54 car will be up front in a lot of races next year. I just don't see Ty Gibbs going out there, though, and winning a championship this year. Now, I think in the next 2 years, we can come back and talk about this conversation. But I think it's a good opportunity. But looking back and going to talk about all this, I think him having that experience will actually help him. I think the more experience he got, the better he would be. Now, he did make a lot of mistakes, and his maturity is something that we're going to be questioning going into next year. But I think he's ready to make the jump. I think he's definitely really excited to make that jump, and it's very exciting to see that he's really excited about it to work with 2311, work with Joe Gibbs Racing next year, driving the number 54 car. Really excited. He's really excited to see what he can do next year. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode, is we're talking about Josh Berry. Now, Josh Berry won the pole for the main Snowball Derby, and Dale Jr. sent out a tweet praising Josh Berry. He says that Josh Berry is a Cup champion waiting for a Cup owner to basically take an opportunity on Josh Berry. Now, when I think about Josh Berry, he is one of the most talented drivers. He's won 100 late model races with Junior, 100 races with Junior Motorsports, whether it's late model races, like major late model races, or winning in the Xfinity Series with the team. He's won 100 races with Junior Motorsports. When I see this tweet, though, from Dale Jr., I'm thinking, Dale, buy a charter so you can get Josh Berry in that car. And I think Junior Motorsports really does need to jump up to the Cup Series as early as possible. And here's why I think they need to make the jump up to the Cup Series with Josh Berry. When I look at Josh Berry, he's an extremely talented driver. He's won a lot of races with Junior Motorsports over the years. And I think it'd make a lot of sense for them to jump up the Cup. Now, obviously, it's going to cost them a lot of money to get a charter because it's going to cost around $30 million. But Dale Jr. has publicly said that money isn't really the big driving factor. It's to worry some of these charters because of the value that they really are. There's not really a lot of value with the charters currently at the moment, especially with the TV deal coming up. There really isn't a lot of value with the charters currently at the moment right now. So that's something that they are really, really worried about going into next year. But I will say this, if I'm Dale Jr., I'm 100% going out and buying it. Well, if I was Dale Jr., but Jr. understands that it's with the fluctuability of the charters and everything like that, it could become a major, major issue. So that being said, though, Junior Motorsports needs to make the jump up the Cup in the future. I think they potentially could announce in 2023. There's a possibility with that, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Whether it's part-time, who knows at this point, but they do absolutely need to try to think about maybe having an opportunity to try to maybe make the jump up to the Cup Series in 2023. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch once again. Now, Kyle Busch sent a tweet out. There was a tweet that came out from NASCAR where David Wilson thanked Kyle and Samantha. And Kyle Busch, he decided to go ahead and thank Toyota in his subtweet late on Sunday evening. Basically, thank Toyota for everything and thank David Wilson for everything, saying it would not have been for Toyota, I would not have been the person that I am today. Obviously, like I mentioned in this video, Kyle Busch will be leaving Toyota and joining Richard Childress Racing. And you think about all the success that Kyle Busch has had at Toyota. Kyle Busch won 60 Cup Series races, basically, whether you count exhibition races or winning races with Joe Gibbs Racing or main races. He won 2 NASCAR Xfinity Series championships with Joe Gibbs Racing and brought a lot of development in the system. Drivers like Noah Gragson, William Byron came through the ranks, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, you name it. A lot of guys came through these ranks from Kyle Busch. And if it wasn't for Toyota giving them those opportunities, that a lot of this stuff probably never ends up genuinely happening. So I understand them thanking Toyota for what they've been able to help Kyle Busch do, because they really helped Kyle Busch get the opportunities that he was able to get in racing. And, you know, he's going to be really fun at Bristol Racing next year. I really think he is. And it's really good to see he's sending a message, because a lot of people probably think that they're on really bad terms. And let's be honest, they probably are not on as bad a terms as they were a few months ago. But I think Kyle Busch is definitely ready to work with the RCR group next year. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. But I think Kyle Busch is definitely really excited to transition over there and start working there. And good to see that he was able, though, to thank Toyota for what they were able to help him do. And he's excited to work with the RCR group next year. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. As Tyler Reddick all spoke to me during the championship banquet, and he appears ready for the transition to 2311 Racing and host to get to the tire test with the team in January. Now, there's a tire test that is going to be coming up with the team this January. Obviously, there's a tire test coming up at Circuit of the Americas. There's a lot of teams that are going to be at that tire test, and he's hoping to be at that test as well. Now, Tyler Reddick also have Nick Payne as a spotter. Nick Payne had been working with Tanner Gray in the Camping World Truck Series, and I think he still will be working with Tanner Gray next year, but he'll be working with him with Tyler Reddick in the Cup Series. Tyler Reddick, of course, will be driving for 23XI Racing in 2023, as Kurt Busch will not be driving full-time in the 45 cars. We already know what's going on with Kurt Busch. Now, when I look at Tyler Reddick, he already was supposed to go there in 2024, but transitioning over in 2023. When I look at Tyler Reddick going into next year, I think Tyler Reddick is really a driver that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. I think this could be one of the most deadly combinations next year with him over at 23XI Racing. He has done, I think, an incredible job with Red Hills Racing. In 2022, he scored 3 victories with the team and was very, very competitive right from the get-go with the team. I think, especially with 23XI Racing, how much they improved this year. I mean, they got to the point where they scored a victory late in the year, and Bubba Wallace is one of the most consistent drivers. I think also with Kurt Busch being there as a mentor, because I think he's going to be a really good mentor for Bubba Wallace and helping Bubba Wallace get through a lot of that stuff. I think that 23XI Racing can really start the year off as good as they ended 2022. And if they can do that, this is going to be a really strong team. I think Tyler Reddick, though, will probably make it to the round of 8 going into next year. I look at how strong Reddick was in 2022, and I think he'll make it to the round of 8. He probably should have had a shot at the championship or at least for sure made it to the round of 8 this year of how strong he was. But there was also a lot of inconsistencies. He had a lot of inconsistencies with Red Hills Racing. Sometimes he had issues. That being said, though, I think him going over to RCR, he's going to be really fun to watch going into next year, and I cannot wait to see what Tyler Reddick is going to do at Red Hills Racing, at 23XI Racing in 2023. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Money Team Racing. Now, Wally Anamoki, who basically is one who was one of the higher-ups at the Money Team Racing, spoke to TobyChristie.com on what their plans are for 2023. So, the plan is for them to actually run more races in 2023, and they plan to expand their schedule with Connor Daly. They're planning to run at least 6 races in 2023 with potentially more, maybe up to 10 to 15 races, and they're planning to expand their schedule for 2023 with Connor Daly. They also confirmed that they have spoken to Julio Castroneves about potentially running the 2023 Daytona 500. We spoke about this on the channel about a week and a half ago. Basically, Adamson reported that the Money Team was one of the teams in the running. So that could be a possibility for Julio Castroneves heading into 2023 for the Daytona 500, along with the Project 91 car for Trackhouse Racing. It's also noted that they would like to get an alliance with Red Hills Racing and ECR Engines to get some engines leased for 2023. Let's talk about some of these moves. Connor Daly made his NASCAR Cup Series debut in 2022 at the Charlotte Roval. Unfortunately, the race did not go so well, but Connor Daly really praised the Money Team despite having issues. He actually did end up praising the Money Team, and I think it'd be cool for him to get more opportunities. Connor Daly's had a couple starts in NASCAR in the past. For him to get potentially more opportunities, the Money Team would be really, really awesome. Also, expanding on their schedule for 2023. This would not be a shock to me. They were originally supposed to run a lot of races in 2022, but they had a lot of time off. I think a lot of it was due to them trying to prepare for 2023. So I think they'll run at least 6-10 races, and a majority of those with Connor Daly. Maybe also Kaz Gralla mixed in there, but Kaz could be going to another team like 3F Racing, but that's a possibility. Now let's talk about Julio Castroneves a little bit, because again, as I mentioned, there's 2 teams in the running for Julio Castroneves, and it's a Project 91 car and the Money Team Racing. Now, if I'm Julio Castroneves, I'm looking at the 2 opportunities I have between the Money Team and Project 91. I'm going to be going with the Project 91 car. There's no disrespect to the Money Team, but I think the Money Team can enter Daytona 500 with Connor Daly. Connor Daly, I think, has enough starts in oval racing where I think he'd be allowed to have a license race in Daytona 500. And I'm a little worried that the Money Team's car may not be as reliable as a car like the Project 91 car. I think the Project 91 Trackhouse car also would be a lot faster as well for Daytona 500. Granted, if they are able to make the show the Money Team, I think Julio would be really, really quick in that race, especially ECR Engines, because I think they would have some pretty decent pace. But I'm a little worried about reliability issues. Also, I'm trying to form up and go over to that with the ECR Engines. I think it'd be cool for them to partner up with ECR Engines to get better engines. I think it would make them much faster. The plans, though, for the team, I think, are really coming into fruition. I think the Money Team is a legitimate team. It really wants to be fast. Of course, some of these guys that are part of that Money Team group were part of Starcom Racing. They got a chassis from Starcom Racing. That's why we saw the 00 car last year at the test sessions at Charlotte in October of 2021. I think it's no surprise, though, that they're trying to expand their schedule. They want to run a lot of races. I I think by 2024, we're going to see a full-time money team racing car. I really think by then they're going to try to go full-time. I think they would like to get a charter. They talk about trying to acquire a charter, and I think that this will help a guy like Floyd Mayweather, and just seeing new owners come to sport the last years, people like Floyd Mayweather who showed up and others have shown up. I think it's fascinating to see, and absolutely really exciting news for sure that they are looking to expand their schedule in 2023. Very exciting news for sure. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as once again, we're speaking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch will be joining Rich Choice Racing in 2023. And he spoke on the transition to the media this past weekend at the championship media availabilities. He spoke on the transition, and he hopes to go to the tire test in January that they are going to be happening. He plans to be a tire test in January at Circuit Americas, and he's hoping to be at a tire test with Richard Childress Racing. He also spoke on Derek Nealon. Now, Derek Nealon will be his spotter in 2023. Derek Nealon has been a spotter for both Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick, and looks success both those drivers have had. Derek Nealon is a spotter that's really recognized and really liked, so I think that he would love to have opportunity. Now, Derek Nealon will likely not be at that test in January, but he wants to get some experience with Derek Nealon. Now, Derek Nealon has actually spotted for Kyle Busch in the Camp World Truck Series in 2022 in the number 51 truck, and will be the spotter once again in 2023 in the number 51 truck. Let's talk about this transition for Kyle Busch, because Kyle Busch also thinks he can win a championship with Richard Childress Racing. And I really think Kyle Busch is excited to work at Richard Childress Racing. He really is excited to work there. He's really shown excitement over the last years. He basically put out a post saying, let's get it. I'm ready to go. Let's get it. Every post he's put out, especially with the WRL race he went to, he's been showing a lot of excitement about going to work with Richard Childress Racing and show the pace of that organization. I think Kyle Busch is really going to get the best out of that equipment. I know some people really expect Kyle Busch to struggle, and a lot of people thought that when he went to Joe Gibbs Racing. But you look at what Kyle Busch was able to do at Joe Gibbs Racing. Won a lot of races, won 56 Cup Series races with Joe Gibbs Racing. Went on to win his final race at Bristol Dirt, won 2 Cup Series championships in 2015, 2019. Won every other major crown jewel except the Daytona 500. Won 1 Coco 600 2018. Won the All-Star race a couple times. Nearly won the Busch Clash in 2022 at the LA Coliseum. He ended up basically, winning the Southern 500 once. He's won a lot of major events in his career. Won a couple Brickyards. He's won a lot of major events with Joe Gibbs Racing. And in the first year he went to Joe Gibbs Racing, he won 8 races. I think also another big thing is I think he'll do great with the team. I think that he will make the championship 4. I don't think he'll win the championship. He could win the championship. It's very possible. I know it sounds crazy to say, considering he's going to cars probably not as good as it was at Joe Gibbs Racing. But Kyle Busch is known to get the best out of equipment. And I really think going over to Joe Gibbs Racing next year, I think he is going to do a phenomenal job in that number 8 car next year, especially with Randall Burnett, who I think is one of the most underrated crew chiefs in the Cup Series garage today, also fellow Missouri native, by the way. But I think that Randall Burnett is a fantastic crew chief. He led Tyler Reddick to NASCAR Xfinity Series championships, and also it was a big part in helping Tyler Reddick become a fantastic driver. I think this is going to be a fantastic transition for Kyle Busch. He says the culture over there is a lot different, which it probably is. It's a lot more different. It's probably a little more laid back at the team than it is at Joe Gibbs Racing, because I think at Joe Gibbs Racing, it is very intense. And I think Kyle Busch really wants to leave a factor. And I think one of Kyle Busch's all-time goals is have more wins than Dale Sr., get close to Dale Sr., and he drove the number 3 car at WRL race. I think Kyle Busch wants to get more wins than Dale Sr. and build a great legacy. Prediction for Kyle Busch heading into 2023, I think Kyle Busch is going to get 3 wins. 1 in the Busch Light Clash, LA Coliseum. I go back to last year's race where that A car was really showing how fast Kyle Busch was. That A car was probably going to be the car that was going to win. So I'm picking Kyle Busch to win that one. I think he gets a few more wins down the road at like Sonoma and a couple other races. And I think he'll be a legitimate championship threat. And historically, he won the championship in 2015, won the championship in 2019. So he could win the championship in 2023 and get his 3rd Cup Series championship with Richard Childress Racing. And if he was to win the championship this year, this would be the first Richard Childress Racing championship, I think, since 1994 when Dale Earnhardt won the championship. So it's been that long since we've seen RCR win a Cup Series championship. And a good thing for Kyle Busch, he's got sponsorship funding lined up. We know Lenovo's going to sponsor him next year. We obviously know the Sling and Hot Wheels, they want to sponsor him. There's probably other companies like Cheddar's and a couple other brands that are going to sponsor Kyle Busch. But I think he's really excited to go over to Richard Childress Racing, ready to work with that team. And if you're an RCR fan, you do have to be really excited about Kyle Busch being over at that team. And Riot Nation's going to grow. I think Kyle Busch is going to be a lot more loved and respected as a driver. I think Kyle Busch is very excited to drive for Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, I did a little bit talk about this on Friday, but I wanted to do a little more of a follow-up on the Kevin Harvick news. So, Kevin Harvick spoke to me this past week in a championship week, and he says that he will make a decision on 2024 before Daytona. It was reported about 2 months ago from Jenna Fryer that Gene Haas has been trying to convince Kevin Harvick to return in 2024, but he thinks that he is going to lose Kevin Harvick in 2023, which is one of the reasons why Ryan Preece is driving this year in 2023, the number 41 car, because Ryan Preece is a better driver than Cole Custer, and they want to give Ryan Preece an opportunity. And I think the big reason is because they think Ryan Preece will go to the 4-car next season. Now, Kevin Harvick did say that he's 50-50 on potential retirement. But you look at Kevin Harvick's age. Kevin Harvick at the end of 2023 is going to be 48 years old. He'll be nearly 50 years old. Also, his son Keelan Harvick is currently racing. Keelan, I believe, is going to be 12 years old by the end of 2024. He's going to be not too far away from making starts in the ARCA West and ARCA East series, and he's already making starts in karting, so it won't be long for Keelan is going out and racing. So I think it's a really good possibility Kevin Harvick retires. Now, if Kevin Harvick is to return, I think there's a couple things that will play a factor in Kevin Harvick if he wants to retire or not, or leave NASCAR. Number one, I think is going to come down to how much money Gene Haas is willing to give him. If Gene Haas is willing to give him $10 to $15 million, even more than that, I think there's a good chance Kevin Harvick could return in 2023. I think that is a major, major possibility. I think another contributing factor is going to be with the development of the team. One of the biggest reasons why I think Gene is really trying to convince Kevin Harvick to stay in 2024 is they don't have a lot of development. Granted, you got Ryan Preece coming in the team, and you do have Cole Custer, who I do expect to be a legitimate championship contender in the Xfinity Series. So you have Cole as a possibility. But after that, who do you got? You've got Hailie Deegan, and it sounds like we're getting close to knowing her plans for 2023. But let's be honest and for real, Hailie Deegan has not been fantastic in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series. Granted, I think she will perform better in the Xfinity Series if she goes full-time in Xfinity. Sounds like I said, we know we're kind of getting close to knowing where she's going to be at in 2023. And that'll probably be announced in the coming days and weeks. But Hailie Deegan, she hasn't proved herself too much yet to the point where she's ready to go. Then you've got Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst, in my honest opinion, has been a very disappointing driver at Stewart-Haas Racing. He's not been terrible. He's had decent runs. But when you're in the same car that 2 years ago nearly won a championship with Chase Briscoe, you're going to be told to step up. And he really hasn't done that. Still has been winless with the Stewart-Haas Race Group and has never won a top-tier series race. Keep in mind, he's going to be 24 at the end of 2023. And he's been in Xfinity now for the last few years. So you would have thought by now he would have stepped up. But he really hasn't stepped up and gotten those wins he needs to be. I expect Cole Custer to completely outperform him, while I think Riley is going to somewhat struggle in 2023. And they just lost the Gray brothers because they're switching to Tricon Garage. Then you've got Zane Smith as the only other option, and Zane Smith's probably going to be at the front row group for the rest of his career. So that's a big problem for Kevin Harvick. The only other option I see Kevin Harvick turning is if SHR's equipment really improves next year. Stewart-Haas Racing has been a mediocre team the last few seasons. Granted, I think in 2022 they did take some steps forward, but not a lot of major steps forward. If he's going to return past 2023, we've got to see the Stewart-Haas Racing Group really improve their equipment and their quality as an organization. Because let's be real, like I said, SHR's equipment has been very, very hit or miss. They haven't had the same pace or speed they've had in the past. And while Kevin Harvick did get 2 wins, the rest of the organization kind of struggled, though they did slightly improve. If they can improve this year, though, on the pace that they've had, I think there's a chance that we could see Kevin Harvick return. But my prediction at this point is I think Kevin Harvick is going to retire at the end of 2023. I just think with his age, and I don't think Stewart-Haas Racing is really going to prove, I think he's going to retire at the end of 2023. But you look at his legacy as a driver. Kevin Harvick has won 60 Cup Series races, and since joining Stewart-Haas Racing, he's had 37 victories in his Cup Series career. And, you know, it shows how great of a driver Kevin Harvick is. He's absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer. He won the Daytona 500 in 2007, has won 3 Brickyard 400s, 2003, 2019, and 2020. He's won the Southern 500 in 2014, and also has won the Cold Close 600 in a couple years, like 2000. I think he won the Southern 500, Coke 600 2 times, and he's just won a lot of big events in his career. Won at Talladega. He's won at every track basically possible except a couple racetracks. But Kevin Harvick is going to go down as one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, and absolutely, in my opinion, a first ballot Hall of Famer when he does decide to retire from the NASCAR Cup Series, being one of the 10 greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, and he's absolutely one of my personal favorite drivers. I mean, I used to not be a big fan of Kevin Harvick. I haven't talked about this much, but really for most of Kevin Harvick's career up until around 7-8 years ago, I wasn't a Kevin Harvick fan. But when he transitioned over to SHR, because I was a big Stu Ross Racing fan, I became a fan of Kevin Harvick, and he really did calm down. And I like some of his outspokenness he's shown on social media, especially as of recently. I think being outspoken is something you got to be for the sport, especially for positive. And I think some of the constructive ways he has been is a really, really positive thing. His impact on the sport is going to be really, really massive, and I think what he's been able to accomplish in racing has just been absolutely incredible. And I think after he retires, he'll probably go to the Fox Sports booth and work in the Fox Sports booth because, you know, he's done really good TV as well, and I think he could be in the Fox Sports booth in 2024, and maybe he replaces Clint Boyer and bring Jamie McMurray back at this point, considering I think Kevin Harvick is a much better broadcaster than Clint Boyer. That being said, though, I think that it will be his last year in 2023. It is possibly returns in 2024, but I think 2023 is going to be the last year for Kevin Harvick in the Cup Series in the number 4 car, and then I think Ryan Preece is going to drive the 4 car, and I think that we may see Cole Custer take over the 41 or the 10 car. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it sounds like Kevin Harvick is undecided on his future past 2023. So that is it for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as my Patreon as well. Links are down below that, and comment below your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Kevin Harvick retires at the end of 2023 or not? Let me know in the comments below. And how well do you think Kyle Busch is going to perform at Richard Childress Racing in 2023? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I'm a little bit undecided what is going to be released on the channel, very similar to Kevin Harvick, but I'm not sure what will be released on the channel tomorrow. Wednesday, I should have a NASCAR news video on the channel. There's going to be some NASCAR news coming out here in the next few days. Thursday, I'm undecided too. There's going to be some team previews dropping, I know that, and I'm pushing that announcement back just a little bit due to personal reasons that I'm not going to get into. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.